Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for being here. I am thrilled to have our fifth episode of Authentic Conversations with Entrepreneurs. And I'm so happy to have here Kari Beebe. Kari is a principal visionary bookkeeper, and she is the founder of PAG Fiscal Services, which stands for Pivot, Adapt, and Grow. I know we're going to hear much more about that. But before we get into conversation, Kari, I'm just going to remind everyone what an authentic conversation is. We're here to talk with entrepreneurs just like Kari, and it's entrepreneurs who are willing to authentically share about the journey of being an entrepreneur. Let's humanize that journey. Let's talk about how powerful it is to actually connect with your authentic self and show up in that sort of conversation. So thank you for being so bold and courageous to do so, Kari. But let's jump right in, because the topic today is stepping outside your comfort zone with networking, and perhaps the LinkedIn Live as well.
For sure.
So, so yeah, Kari, I'll say I know you're comfortable with me sharing that you are a self-proclaimed introvert.
Oh,
I
for
have a
sure.
little of that myself. So, as I was telling you before, I think there's a million and one articles you can find on, or introverts networking. How do you do it? But what I'm excited about is actually exploring the journey of how you've come to do this more comfortably. So, let's begin with just what does this phrase mean to you? Stepping outside that comfort zone with networking. Where does that begin for you?
Well, it all began with absolutely zero networking back in the in the
Back in
early
the day.
yeah, in the early stages of my business. It was purely word of mouth, and in my little bit of my defense, my girls were little at the time, so I wasn't really interested in growing my side gig. But as they got older, I realized that to make this really take off and grow, I'm gonna need to make some effort and put some effort into it. And it was absolutely frightening for me to think about, meeting people. Um,
There's a word, yeah.
yeah.
So, I mean, how long did that frightening feeling last? How did it start with a dip toe, or did you just jump all in?
Well, it was kind of a little happenstance. I was working out of my home and was not getting much productivity. It was pretty low because I say the house is a squirrel. There's always a load of laundry to run, unload the dishwasher. It was just
Squirrel.
yeah, exactly, too distracting. So I looked at co-working spaces to find a new home, and I looked at several, and I walked into one particular one, and I remember very vividly thought, wow, this is the place. So
Yeah,
I immediately signed up, and due to COVID, they're no longer in business, but I really, that is the key pivotal moment that
turning
started
point,
me
huh?
down this road. Oh, for
Yeah.
sure.
Well, that's where we met too, Kari. So,
Mhm.
so it's a
Yes.
powerful place. Yeah. Yeah.
Yes.
So they had networking events. Is that one of your first experiences of really diving in or dipping the toe?
Very first one. I remember Joseph was like, "Hey, we're having a networking event in the kitchen. We've got like 20
Downstairs, right? Yeah.
downstairs, right? We're having people come."
No
And I'm
excuses. You just walk down
right.
the stairs.
And I'm thinking in my head, "Oh no. This I got to
Where's
do
the
small
squirrel? I
talk
gotta
with
find the squirrel.
exactly." But I sucked it up and I'm like, "Okay, you have got to try this."
If I'm
And
gonna
so I
be here, I'm gonna be here, right?
And I
Yeah.
remember meeting you. I remember meeting my friend Melinda, another friend of mine, Jay. And I look back at that first event, and I'm gripping my cup of coffee, grip of death, trying to come up with small talk and
Oh.
engage these people because I'm the little bookkeeper in the corner and didn't think I had anything to offer, but that was my very first event. I remember it very clearly.
It's I love the visual of gripping the coffee. Is
Mhm.
that well, we'll get into advice for others, but so how did you go from gripping the coffee to let me do this a little bit more?
It was a journey. I After that event, I was invited to a bigger luncheon that was local, and
Beyond the
I
coffee, gripping the fork.
oh Yes, tables of people talking, but at least I knew one person who was attending, so that gave me a little bit of confidence. But
Did you
you
go
know,
with that person?
we went separately, but I sat with her, and I
Mhm. Mhm.
remember at one point they're like, "Okay, we're gonna take 10 minutes to do a networking break, and then we're gonna hear from our speaker." And I was like, "Whoop, time to go to the restroom." You know, I'm out of here.
Yeah.
But I knew this was what I needed to do to
Mhm.
move my business forward. And um, frankly, I did have some failures along the way. I I can recall two, maybe three incidents where I registered for something,
Mhm.
drove up. In one case, I walked in the building,
Mhm.
got about 10 feet from the registration table, and I was like, not today. And I turned around and
Like
I
you saw
left.
the room, or just a feeling in you, or?
There were so many people there.
Mhm.
So many people. This was in the before times,
Yeah. Yeah.
pre-COVID.
So not
It,
not because of COVID that you were like, no, 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 I can't go in that room, but just too many people and discomfort.
yeah, too many walking into a room cold that's just filled with other people having conversations. I mean, my anxiety went up and I went home.
Yeah. So how did you get over that hurdle?
Um, that starting smaller, starting
Yeah.
smaller,
Great
and
tip.
yeah. So the next step after that kind of failure was to go to a smaller group. It happened to be my friend Melinda was running
Mhm.
a smaller group, and it was women only. And I think that had something to do with it as well.
No
Just
offense, men.
what's that?
I said no offense, men.
No offense, men, but to get started, I think that was a key step. And
Yeah.
so, I was going to that very consistently, and that gave me a little more courage to branch out into some of the bigger groups and, kind of chip away one person at a time, trying to meet people and
Yeah.
move down the field, so to speak, in
Yeah.
in the experience. And then the next thing that came was Corona.
Mm.
And
Nothing
that
like a throwing a wrench in it, right?
Yeah, nothing like a pandemic to really mess up your networking.
I think it was a wrench for a lot of people, but
Yeah.
specific to networking, pretty big one. So how did you navigate that?
Well, I was at first I was really disappointed because I was just starting to get some traction, get some momentum, and um, then we're all at home
Yeah.
and we're stuck.
Yeah.
But then the beauty of Zoom, um, which at some points, people now are like, "Oh my God, I loathe Zoom," but
Yeah.
that was fantastic for me because I was in control. You
Mm.
know, I could be on mute, or sometimes I'd stop my video in the larger
Right.
group. So it just, I found these niche little markets of um, online networking, and being in my own physical space,
Mhm.
but yet talking to people in a breakout room felt more unbelievably natural to me.
Mhm. Mhm.
And so that's kind of where I honed more of the skills of the conversation.
Mm.
And honestly, from listening to other participants, the types of questions to ask.
Mm.
What led you to this industry, or what
Curiosity. Yeah.
exactly. And I also love learning.
Yeah.
I'm a lifelong learner, and so I was
That's the growth,
generally,
right?
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
I was generally interested, and some people just have fascinating careers that I got to learn about.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that silver lining of COVID for me was Zoom. And
There's the
yeah,
quote. I don't know that everybody would agree with that,
yeah, the
but
silver
that's
lining.
yeah. So now that there's vaccines and things have opened up a little bit more, and there's more of a hybrid model, right? I assume you've done some in-person networking. So how did you go from Zoom and the comfort of Zoom to doing some things in person?
It was a slope, we were all kind of like putting one toe out the door.
Were you missing
Um,
it? Like you're like, I'm good now.
but Zoom, yes, it was the silver lining for me, but it, there is something to be said about meeting in person.
Yeah.
And kudos again to my friend Melinda. She moved her group outside.
Oh, smart.
So
Yeah.
everybody brought their soccer chairs and
Yeah.
we sat around a pavilion at a park and we still got to have that interaction spaced
Mhm.
6 feet apart.
Yeah.
Um, and so, and not everybody was comfortable being out in the world. So the group was a little smaller. And so that group, as it grew in momentum and size, kind of, like it or not, dragged me along with it. I was getting better
I
at
love that. Dragged me
this.
along with it. Yeah.
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 And networking is, I went to a 4-year college. I was a business major, and nowhere did they ever teach networking. This is back in the ancient times. Um,
Sure.
but it's a life skill that needs to be shared with
Yeah.
the youth, especially now. The youth, they think everything can be done on their phone,
Mm.
and it doesn't always work that way.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. So I love this journey that you've taken, and even sharing one of the, I'll call it a hiccup more than a total disaster. Um, but in your day business, I mean, well, a couple things. I think I
mhm,
also love that as you were telling the story about that first moment in the downstairs kitchen at the networking space, you said my friend Melinda, my friend,
mhm.
and obviously grip the coffee, they weren't friends yet. So it speaks volumes to the depth of relationships you've been able to build. But I'm curious, how has this intersected with your business? How has it helped build the business? But um, I feel like there's something with PHE Fiscal Services, pivot, adapt, grow. Have
Mhm.
you felt that connection in your business? Because I see it clearly. I can't help myself.
Well, the pivot, adapt, grow comes from and I think this is probably the first time I've shared it. I had a medical incident. Gosh, 10 years ago or so,
Yeah.
and it really derailed me. Um, I was a little bit lost. I still had this side gig, doing bookkeeping, but I was lost.
Mhm.
And that when I heard that quote, it was pivot, adapt, grow. And I had pivot before COVID.
Lay claim to it.
I did, and you're a witness. You helped me,
Yeah, I know.
So, but that
You were
was
already trending.
yes, I'm very trendy. Um, but that growing, I pivoted
Mhm.
and grew myself as an individual, grew through that time where I needed to make some changes.
Adapted,
And
yeah.
and then that led to, growing my business. So it's a very personal phrase for me
Yeah.
and my life. And the again, silver lining of COVID being Zoom, I now have customers that I've never met in real life.
Mm.
We've only
Mhm.
done Zoom. They're in other states, you
Yeah.
know, and it's allowed me to grow the business for
Yeah.
sure. But
Okay.
yeah.
I was gonna say I think you answered the question. I always believe that when you connect with this like authentic truth within yourself, this powerful phrase, this, I mean, it's how you carry yourself. It's exactly what you've done through the
Hmm.
exploration as an introvert, networking in a business world, right?
Hmm.
When you connect with that, I believe it ignites your business, and that you answered that preemptively without even knowing because yeah, I think when I think of you, Kari, there's where we started at the networking space, gripping the coffee. I didn't notice that, by the way, but I knew you were more introverted, and yet I've excuse me, I've been with you somewhat on this journey, right? Like at least on the sidelines. And when I think of you now, I think, gosh, Kari's such a networker, and it makes me so excited for you and admirable of you. And that's exactly why I wanted you to share this story because you've taken such a beautiful journey in challenging yourself, adapting, growing yourself. And I think that there's no stinking Google article that can ever share that. So
No, and
no way.
dare I say, I actually enjoy networking now.
What? Drop the mic.
I know. So the
It's possible.
the thing is, you do have to realize I'm still an introvert.
Yeah.
And I will like have a breakfast and a lunch or I'll have to close my eyes for 15 minutes and recharge the battery because
Yeah.
you can't change the fact that it drains your energy as an
Right.
introvert.
Right.
So at least I know that and I know my limits. I'm like,
Right.
oh, I can't do X, Y, and Z in the day. One of them has to go or I
Yeah.
won't make it.
Yeah.
But
Set yourself up for success. So
exactly.
yeah.
Don't book yourself back to back to back. I mean, I remember one day during the learning process, I had 3 Zooms in a row, and when I finished the last one, I shut the door of my camera and I literally put my head down on my desk. I was drained.
You know what I call very Zoom filled days?
What's that?
Because I have introvert in me as well. I say it feels like a zoo in me. So I don't. I don't know that everyone can relate to that, but if you're an introvert, you know exactly what we're talking
Yes.
about.
Yes.
But I love that you said. I mean, I've written about, and I'll share the link. But I've written about stepping outside your comfort zone, which you wouldn't necessarily think is authentically aligned, right? Like showing up as your authentic self, is that outside your comfort zone? But I love that you said you're still an introvert.
Mhm.
You're still you. But what I have said about stepping outside your comfort zone, when you do it long enough, which is exactly what you've illustrated here, what happens is you begin to expand it. It's interesting effect, and expanding that helps to expand your business naturally.
Mhm.
So
For sure.
beautiful journey. Thank you for sharing, Kari. And so, well, let me share this link. If you're interested in seeing that article on outside the comfort zone and showing up with your authentic self, you can go here to my website. But where can folks connect with you, Kari? How can they connect with you?
2 main ways of getting in touch with me. I've got a profile on Instagram, PAG Fiscal Services, Pivot, Adapt, Grow Fiscal
There you go.
Services, and I'm on LinkedIn. Just my name, Kari Beebe, first and last name spelled kind of funky, so I'm the only one. Or you can go to my website, PAG Fiscal Services, and reach me through the contact form. So
Yeah. And I just have to say, let me put these social ones up there one more time because it is a highlight of my day when I see your social posts, Kari, because you are a closet comedian. Like, it is amazing. Like, I wouldn't think anybody could ever make fiscal industry anything, bookkeeping, anything funny, and you do. So I think that's bravo. That's all I got to say about it. Bravo. You
well,
found a way.
as an illustration, I was with a client the other day. I'm coaching her in how to do her own books, and we were doing her credit card statement. We were missing like $50 or something, and so I'm scanning the statement and I'm looking at the QuickBooks, and I'm like,
Gotta
"Oh!"
reconcile that.
I said, "Here it is," and we checked the box and got it reconciled, and I'm like, "Yes!" And she's like, "You really like this, don't you?" And I'm like, "This is my happy place."
my jam.
I'm like high-fiving her, and she's like, "Whatever, Kari."
That's awesome. I love that. That just speaks volumes. I mean, there's the can market all day and say what people think what a lot of businesses will say what they think the person wants to hear, right? But I just think that story speaks volumes to the very nature of how you deliver what you do and why you. So thanks for sharing it. And the whole message, the whole journey, I want to thank you for being here. I'll put your site up one more time so folks can see that. But, it takes courage and heart to show up authentically. And I really appreciate you doing that, Kari. I value our friendship and miss our days of hugging. But
Yes.
I'm coming after you soon. We're going to do coffee, and I told you to send me a hug.
I'm still working on the hugging. Networking, yes. Hugging, yeah.
Yeah. I think I pushed you outside your comfort zone on that because I am a hugger.
And I do appreciate that.
But it's been a hot minute since we've had one, so it's overdue.
That's true. Well, and thank you so much for inviting me. This has been a fun time, and very much enjoy sharing with everybody.
Yeah, awesome. And don't miss our next episode of Authentic Conversations with Entrepreneurs on June 16th at 1:30 Eastern Time. And until then, get to know Kari because she's pretty stinking awesome.
Thank you,
Take care,
Katherine.
everyone. Thank you.